Here's the inside story of how protein became a national obsession in America and the real amount of protein humans require. America has developed an insatiable appetite for protein. From whey-infused smoothies to protein-rich pancakes, pasta, and even ice cream, this muscle-building macronutrient is seen as the ultimate remedy for all health concerns. Cutting Jones, a food historian and the director of food studies, explains that protein has become a universal solution. Whether you want to build muscle or lose weight, the advice is often to increase protein intake. It's commonly believed that everyone, from pets to elderly relatives, requires more protein. Over the past few decades, our average protein consumption has consistently exceeded the daily recommended intake suggested by health organizations. Interestingly, despite these organizations progressively lowering their recommended protein amounts per day, our consumption has remained high. Additionally, determining the ideal protein requirement for a healthy diet remains unresolved, adding complexity to the situation. Protein, unlike other macronutrients criticized by the diet industry, remains in a scientific and cultural gray area, prompting the question: what is the optimal amount of protein needed for our diet? The protein craze has been fueled in part by decades of diet trends that have led us to narrow down our food choices in pursuit of the most beneficial options. Diets such as Atkins and keto have demonized carbohydrates, while others like the Ornish diet have vilified fats. With both carbs and fats being criticized, protein emerged as the sole nutrient considered acceptable to consume in unlimited quantities while still promoting good health. According to Mozaffarian, a cardiologist and director of the Food as Medicine Institute, protein is the only macronutrient that remains widely accepted. However, he emphasizes that labeling a food as solely a source of protein is oversimplified. Mozaffarian points out that most foods contain a combination of multiple macronutrients, similar to how they contain fats or carbohydrates. The concept of good health has become closely intertwined with protein consumption. Sarahs, a professor of medicine at Columbia University Medical Center's Institute of Human Nutrition, suggests that because protein is widely perceived as essential for health, it has become an easily marketable target. Most of us, assuming we're consuming enough calories, are likely also getting sufficient protein, Cutting Jones explains. Therefore, we probably don't need to be as concerned about it as we often are. Much of the emphasis on protein consumption is driven by financial motives. The concept of good health and protein consumption have become inseparable, Cutting Jones observes. Nowadays, the label, high in protein, is frequently found on products that traditionally wouldn't be considered protein-rich, such as cereal. When a food item advertises its protein content, consumers tend to make additional favorable assumptions about its overall nutritional value. Interestingly, participants seem to overlook the fact that the protein-fortified cereal contained higher levels of sugar, sodium, and calories than the original version. Today, the Food and Drug Administration recommends a daily protein intake of 50 grams. However, despite these recommendations, Americans have been consuming more protein than ever before in the decades since they were introduced, according to Cutting Jones. The question of how much protein we actually need remains unresolved among experts. Mozaffarian notes that consuming more protein than necessary results in the conversion of excess protein to fat. However, unlike fat, which typically goes directly to adipose tissue, the surplus protein undergoes a process called de novo lipogenesis in the liver, where it is converted into fat. Mozaffarian explains that this type of fat tends to accumulate around the organs, which can lead to an elevated risk of metabolic syndrome and heart disease. Despite the appeal of a high-protein, low-carb diet, Mozaffarian warns that consuming excess protein still heightens the risk of diabetes. This is because surplus amino acids from the excess protein intake can impact insulin signaling, even though they don't directly elevate blood sugar levels. Protein consists of organic compounds known as amino acids. Among the 20 amino acids required by our bodies, 9 are classified as essential, indicating that we must obtain them from our diet as our bodies cannot produce them internally. However, even if our meals are not perfectly balanced in these 9 amino acids, our bodies are proficient at extracting the necessary nutrients. Sarahs affirms that research supports this notion, stating, "There's a strong consensus that if you happen to consume insufficient amino acids in a particular meal, it evens out over time. However, the mere presence of a high protein content does not necessarily indicate that a food item is the optimal choice. Sarris and Cutting-Jones point out that certain packaged foods, particularly ultra-processed ones, may advertise high protein counts, but they often contain added protein. They argue that consuming a variety of proteins from whole foods is preferable to consuming a large quantity of protein isolate added to packaged foods. Watford, a professor of nutritional sciences, suggests that Americans' protein consumption can be categorized into high-quality protein and high-quantity protein. However, protein has predominantly been associated with high quantity over the past 50 years or so, and reversing this trend could require significant effort. Watford reminisces about a time 4 decades ago when he first arrived in USA from UK, and witnessed Wisconsin dairy farmers freely distributing whey protein to pig farmers. Someone realized that by packaging it nicely, whey protein could be marketed as a valuable supplement to athletes and fitness enthusiasts.